Kvath adjusted his tie as he paced down the familiar streets on his way to work. His phone nestled snugly against his ear. He chuckled at a joke his wife, Sarah, had just made. The sun was slowly peeking through remnants of heavy clouds, casting a warm, golden hue across the waking city. It was one of those mornings where everything seemed aligned. The world was vibrant with possibility, and he felt energized by the promise of a new day. Yet, as he rounded the corner from Maple onto Elm Street, a palpable shift in the atmosphere caught his attention. Kvath frowned slightly, sensing a disturbance in the otherwise lively rhythm of the city. As he turned his gaze along the sidewalk, his eyes fell upon an unusual scene. The stark contrast between the bustling energy of the city and the stillness of a homeless man sitting in a wheelchair. This man, older than Kvath with unkempt hair and a beard that seemed to blend with the dirt on his face, sat amongst a disarray of tattered newspapers and crumpled fast food wrappers. His clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, a patchwork of fabrics telling tales of neglect. Kvath felt a deep pang of compassion surge through him. Although he was no stranger to the reality of poverty and homelessness in the city, this man evoked a raw, visceral feeling, a call to action, a sense of urgency that pierced through the mundane worries of everyday life. "Hey, hold on for a second," Kvath said into the phone, interrupting his wife mid-sentence. "I'll call you back." Determination washed over him as he stepped away from the crowd, his heart racing with a mix of hope and hesitation. He approached the man, who appeared exhausted yet alert. "Hi, what's your name?" Kvath asked, warmth spilling from his thoughtful expression. For a brief moment, the man looked up at Kvath, surprise and disbelief etched across his features. "Andre," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nice to meet you, Andre," Kvath said, forcing himself to smile even wider. Without hesitation, he reached into his bag and pulled out a food package that he had just picked up from a nearby deli, a well-stuffed sandwich, a ripe apple, and a bottle of sparkling water. "Take this. Maybe it can help you a little today." Andre accepted the offering, hesitation flickering in his gaze before gratitude washed over his face. "Thank you," he muttered, his expression a mix of astonishment and humility as he clutched the bag tightly to his chest. Intrigued by Andre's story, Kvath lingered for a few moments, his heart instinctively drawn to hear the narrative life had thrust upon this man. "How did you end up here?" he asked gently, doing his best to avoid making assumptions. "It's a long story," Andre replied, his voice tinged with a weariness that suggested everything had been a struggle. "I lost my job 2 years ago. Good work, too. I was in construction, building homes. When the economy took a dive, the layoffs started. I couldn't pay rent after a few months. I lost my apartment, then everything else. You think you can control your life, but then it spins out of control in a heartbeat." Kvath listened, absorbing every word as if they were precious treasures, his heart heavy with the weight of Andre's struggle. He was almost struck speechless by the sudden realization that a simple misfortune, a single setback, could spiral into something far graver, something life-altering. Their dialogue was unexpectedly interrupted as a street photographer, who had been capturing the vibrancy of daily life, turned his camera towards them. With a flash that momentarily blinded 5 nearby pigeons, the photographer snapped a picture just as Andre received the food package from Kvath. "Beautiful moment," the photographer called out, a hint of excitement in his voice. Unfazed by the sudden intrusion, Kvath continued to talk, sharing lighthearted anecdotes while Andre slowly creaked a smile, revealing a hint of hope behind the exhaustion. It was in these fleeting moments that Kvath felt the humanity of the city come alive, strangers connecting over a shared moment, a spark of recognition in the chaos of life. After a brief time together, Kvath realized he had to leave to avoid being late for work. "Listen, Andre, it was really nice to meet you. I have to get going, but I hope today brings you some comfort." With that, he waved goodbye and turned to walk away, feeling a sense of fulfillment mingled with sadness, the kind that comes from knowing the world could be so cold, yet still having the warmth of connection. Little did Kvath know, their chance encounter would send ripples of change sweeping across the city. The photograph clicked by the street photographer rapidly spread across social media, igniting a wave of compassion that prompted an outpouring of goodwill. Within hours, it went viral, inspiring others to take notice of the world around them. Across town, people saw the photograph of the homeless man in the wheelchair accepting food from a well-dressed stranger. The striking image resonated with countless viewers, stirring feelings of empathy that many had buried deep within. Comments bubbled up, filled with support and shared stories of kindness. Some wrote, "This reminds me to be grateful for what I have," while others pledged to do something, anything, to help those less fortunate. A group of volunteers was particularly moved by Andre's plight. Inspired by the compelling image, they quickly formed a plan. They mobilized their networks, gathering donations of money, food, clothing, and even essential documents that could help Andre transition out of homelessness. News of the photograph spread like wildfire, igniting a collective resolve. We can do something good. The following day, the volunteers gathered outside the very spot where Andre had sat, armed with bags full of essentials and warm clothing items. Kvath, on his usual route to work, found himself walking in the same direction as yesterday. He couldn't shake the image of Andre from his mind. His heart had been transformed in that brief meeting, now filled with wonder about the ripple effects of kindness. Upon reaching the site, Kvath was surprised to see the small crowd congregated around his previous encounter. Approaching the scene in confusion, he quickly realized what had transpired. "We saw the photograph, and we want to help," one volunteer explained kindly, kneeling down beside Andre. "We got a plan to get you back on your feet. Would you like to come with us?" Andre, overwhelmed with emotion at the response of strangers, simply nodded. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized that maybe the world hadn't forgotten about him after all. The smiles and optimism radiating from the volunteers gave him hope. The tiniest flicker that had been long extinguished could be rekindled again. Under their care, Andre was taken to a local shelter, where he was welcomed with open arms. He was greeted with hot meals, a warm blanket, and comfortable shelter, a space to recuperate, both physically and mentally. Andre learned that this place was more than just a roof. It was a community that fostered healing and rejuvenation. He was no longer just a statistic. Here, he was valued, seen, and heard. At the shelter, Andre met others who had faced similar struggles, but had found support from the dedicated staff willing to help them navigate the turbulent waters of restarting. They ensured he received medical care, counseling, and connected him with job training programs back in construction, something he was passionate about and excelled at. Meanwhile, Kvath experienced a transformation that day as he returned home from work. He found himself reflecting on the unexpected convergence of lives he had witnessed. He spoke candidly with Sarah about the experience and the greater purpose they shared, a life enriched by simple acts of kindness. "Sometimes we get so caught up in the rush of it all," Kvath mused, knocking his tie slightly askew in excitement. "I think we forget how much impact a small gesture of kindness can have." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with understanding. "Yes, we may not be able to help everyone, but what's most important is to do something. Anything that can inspire others and create a ripple effect, just like that photo did for Andre." Determined to be active participants in their community, the couple began volunteering together. They organized food drives, clothing exchanges, and awareness events focused on helping the homeless and marginalized individuals they encountered. They forged connections with local shelters and became involved in community discussions about solutions to tackle homelessness, ensuring that Andre's newly ignited hope wasn't just a fleeting moment, but a lasting change for him and others. Weeks turned into months, and as the seasons changed, Andre began to flourish. With support, he found a position in a construction crew, assisted by a staff member from the shelter who had made connections within the industry, a once-distant dream now tangible. His spirit soared on the wings of newfound purpose, ready to give back to the community that had once lifted him from the depths of despair. Their day-to-day lives had changed significantly. Kvath and Sarah had not only spread kindness through their own actions, but they devoted themselves to amplifying the voices of those less fortunate in their community. They held workshops to educate others on how to contribute meaningfully, showcasing the power of connection and compassion. One sunny afternoon, just a few months after his encounter with the volunteers, Andre stood in front of a local community center as a guest speaker at an awareness event. Kvath and Sarah sat in the audience, supporting him along with others who had been touched by the movement that had spiraled from a single photograph. The room was filled with locals who had come to witness his journey and hear his story. "It is an honor to speak to you today," Andre began, standing tall, with palpable gratitude radiating from him. He recalled the darkness he felt while living on the streets, the isolation, the helplessness, and how he had almost lost faith in humanity. "But then something miraculous happened," he continued. "A stranger named Kvath saw me, really saw me, and offered me a moment of kindness that sparked a change in his life and mine. That photograph showed the world what compassion looks like. It ignited an incredible response that restored my hope and dignity." Cheers erupted from the audience, affirming Andre's sentiments as he shared his hard-fought journey back to stability and purpose. He detailed the volunteer efforts that had transformed countless lives, including his own. With emotion creeping into his voice, he acknowledged the love and support he now treasured in his life. After his speech, several attendees approached Andre, eager to understand how they could learn from his resilience and make their mark on their communities. He effortlessly became a leader and advocate, quickly finding a niche where he could encourage others not just to act, but to care deeply about their shared humanity. On the sidelines of the event, Kvath had never felt prouder as he turned to Sarah. "Look at him," he marveled. "I had no idea the impact we could have simply by taking a moment to be kind." Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "It's about what we can all do together, creating a ripple effect that transforms lives. It started with you, but it is growing into something bigger, a movement that shines light in the lives of many." And so, the weeks rolled on into months, and as the warmer days of spring turned into the heat of summer, Andre was thriving. He became a mentor at the shelter, helping newer residents navigate their own recovery and reconnect with their dreams. He coordinated small teams to help below the poverty line repair the homes of vulnerable folks in their community, weaving his experience with empathy into each meeting. As time went on, Kvath and Sarah found themselves drawn deeper into the world of social impact. They started a small nonprofit, bringing renewed awareness and resources to those in need, fostering community connections among volunteers and those they aimed to support. While they were unsure if they could scale their mission, they were unwavering in their belief that kindness had the power to change the world, one touch at a time. Months later, a local news station covered their organization, and they held a fundraiser at a popular venue to gather more support. It was an exciting night, filled with donor pitches, community highlights, and Andre standing at the podium once again sharing his story. The energy in the room felt electric, and Kvath was immensely proud of how far they had all come. Andre concluded his heartfelt speech with a reminder to everyone in attendance. "If we can remember that every act, no matter how small, can plant seeds of hope, we can transform this world into something kinder together." The entire audience erupted with applause, the impact echoing in their hearts and minds. In this whirlwind of progression, Andre met someone special, Lila, a fellow volunteer from another organization. They grew close, bonded by their shared mission, spirit, and passion for advocacy. They began building a new life together, cultivating an environment that was fueled by love and purpose. In time, they began brainstorming about how they could impact more lives, creating programs to invest in future generations and help people develop skills that would lift them from the shadows. As the years rolled by, Kvath and Sarah found joy in their families, their relationships, and in the waves of change that began stemming from the community they had forged. They watched with swollen hearts as more and more individuals began to answer the call of compassion, spreading kindness in ways they never dreamed possible. Across the city, murals depicting themes of compassion adorned walls, renovated shelters became havens of safety, and a network of kindness began to flourish. In the backdrop, Andre became a beacon of hope, speaking at schools, inspiring young minds to embrace empathy and assert their capacity for goodness. The city that once felt overwhelming with despair began transforming into a tapestry of hope, unity, and human connection, woven together by stories of resilience and the power of kindness. On one particular evening, while hosting a community gathering to celebrate their ongoing initiatives, Kvoth found himself standing against the late-setting sun. He listened intently to the laughter and joyful conversations flowing around him, this vibrant tapestry of lives connected through shared experiences filling his heart with gratitude. He glanced over at Andre, now standing at the center of a circle of aspiring young volunteers, sharing tales of his journey. The man who once sat alone on the streets was now an embodiment of hope, leading others to become the best versions of themselves. "Can you believe this?" Sarah said, wrapping her arm around Kvoth's shoulder. "From a simple act of kindness to this." "Unbelievable," Kvoth replied, his chest swelling with emotion at the sight of Andre's journey come full circle. All it took was a moment to reach out and care. It reminds us that each of us has a role to play in this world, a chance to uplift one another when times get tough. They stood side by side, hearts alight with pride and purpose. It dawned on them that kindness doesn't just live in our actions. It thrives in the connections we foster and the communities we build. Far beyond what they had imagined, the ripple effect initiated by a single moment had brought forth a burgeoning tide of transformation. It became clearer to Kvoth as the sun dipped beyond the city skyline that, while they couldn't save everyone, they could certainly empower and uplift many, reminding each other of the strength and unity. As the night wore on and laughter echoed into the starry sky, Kvoth found peace in knowing that tomorrow, or even the spark right before him, might ignite the next wave of kindness that could change lives once again. And so, they moved forward, guided by the light of compassion, carrying memories of their journeys, cherishing their newfound roles in a world that, at its core, still cherished kindness, compassion, and connection.